this island. Somewhere between the longitude and latitude, a split opened up, and it beached remotely here. No matter how hard I correlate, it remains a singularity. Donnelly reported the legend of the hermit, a holy man who sought solitude in its most pure form. Allegedly, he rode here from the mainland in a boat. There was once talk of a wind farm out here, away from the rage and the intolerance of the masses. The sea, they said, is too rough for the turbines to stand. I have found the ship's manifest, crumpled and waterlogged under a stash of paint cans. The mount is clearly the focal point of this landscape. It almost appears so well placed as to be artificial. When someone had died or was dying, or was so ill they gave up what little hope. I quote directly, a motley lot with little to recommend them. I have now spent 3 days in their company. That is, I fear, enough. Dear Esther, I met Paul. I made my own little pilgrimage. I would leave you presents outside your retreat in this interim space between cliff and beach. I would leave you loaves and fishes. The vegetation here has fossilized from the roots up. To think they once grazed animals here, the remnants of occupation. Dear Esther, I have now driven the stretch of the M5 between Exeter and Bristol over 21 times. An imagined answer phone message. The tires are flat, the wheel spins loosely. There must be a hole in the bottom of the boat. How else could new hermits have arrived? had kidney stones and you visited me in the hospital. After the operation, when I was still half submerged in anesthetic, your outline... Is this what Paul saw through his windscreen? Not Lot's wife looking over her shoulder, but a scar in the hillside, falling away to black forever. I've begun to climb, away from the sea and towards the center. It is a straight line to the summit. The bothy was constructed originally in the early 1700s. Inventory. A trestle table we spread wallpaper on in our first home. A folding chair I laughed at you for... In a footnote, the editor comments that at this point Donnelly was going insane as syphilis tore through his system like a drunk driver. They found Jakobsen in early spring. The thaw had only just come. Even though he'd been dead nearly 7 months, his body had been frozen right down to the nerves and had not even begun to decompose. All around him, small flowers were reaching for the weak sun. The goats had adjusted happily to life without a shepherd and were grazing freely about the valley. Donnelly reports they hurled the body in fear and disgust down the shaft, but I cannot corroborate this. Climbing down to the caves, I slipped and fell and have injured my leg. I think the femur is broken. It is clearly infected. Donnelly's addiction is my one true constant, even though I wake in false dawns and find the landscape. I first saw him sat by the side of the road. I was waiting for you to be cut out of the wreckage. I am traveling through my own body, following the line of infection from the shattered femur towards the heart. This is a drowned man's face, reflected in the moonlit waters. It can only be a dead shepherd who has come to drunk drive you home. The moon over the Sanford Junction, headlights in your retinas. Donnelly drove a grey hatchback without a... Fire and soil, I chose fire. It seemed the more contemporary of the options, the more sanitary. I could not bear the thought of the reassembly of such a ruins. stitching arm to shoulder and femur to hip, charting a line of thread like traffic stilled on a motorway, making it all acceptable for There were chemical diagrams on the mug he gave me coffee in, sticky at the handle where his hands shook. From here, I can see my armada. I collected all the letters I'd ever meant to send to you, if I'd have ever made it to the mainland. I will drag my leg behind me. I will drag it like a crumpled hatchback, tires blown and sparking across the dimming lights of my vision. I'm running out of painkillers and am following the flicker of the moon. I've begun my voyage in a paper boat without a bottom. I will fly to the moon in it. I've been folded along a crease in time, a weakness in the sheet of life. If only Donnelly had experienced this, he would have realized he was his own shoreline, as am I. Just as I am becoming this island, so he became his syphilis, retreating into the burning synapses, the stones, the infection. There are headlights reflected in these retinas, too long in the tunnels of my island without a bottom. The sea creatures have risen to the surface, but the gulls are not here to carry them back to their nests. I've become fixed, open and staring, an eye turned on itself. I've become an infected leg whose tracking lines form a perfect map of the junctions of the M5. A gull perched on a spent bonnet, sideways, whilst the sirens fell through the middle distance and the metal moaned in grief about us. I'm about this night in walking, old bread and gull bones, old Donnelly at the bar gripping his drink, old Esther walking with our children, old Paul as ever, old Paul. He shakes and he shivers and he turns off his lights alone. Twin vapor trails in the air, white lines etched into these rocks. Dear Esther, I have burned the cliffs of Damascus. I have drunk deep of it. My heart is my leg and a black line etched on the paper all along this boat without a bottom. You are all the world like a nest to me. Eggs unbroken form like fossils, come together, send small black flowers to the air. On this infection, hope.